So, what is a tandem fighter? It's actually quite easy. See, all they are is just two characters in one. And throughout the platform fighter scene especially, there's a lot of them. Some good, some bad, some all in between. So rather than waste your goddamn time, let's just get into it. Pyra and Mythra are okay. I don't really mean how they'd rank on a tier list, and I more so mean their mechanical depth. They are technically the same character, it's just that some characteristics are changed. Mythra is the faster one, and usually racks up the percent. Pyra is slower, but she can kill a lot earlier. Now listen, just being simple doesn't mean that you're sort of bad or maybe a boring character. I played Mario in Smash 4, and Irie in Stardust Valkyries. These characters would definitely be labeled as, vanilla, regular, eat potato chips and lie kind of characters. But I'd argue that they're not really boring. Pyra and Mythra, for being tandem characters, are pretty boring to both play and watch. I know going to Pyra is the point, but goddamn, there is really no reason to use Mythra until the opponent is at like 30 to 40%, or you can spike them. Plus, and maybe this is just me spitballing here, but isn't there kind of a reason to have weaknesses in a fighting game? The grappler that has to beat a zoner. A grounded character dealing with someone's air mobility. A big body guy having to deal with the small character, the rat. Although it can make it a little annoying at times, having these sorts of weaknesses, I think, should be accepted more than not be accepted. But Pyra and Mythra don't really have a weakness that they have to manage to make them just a little more interesting when it comes to matchups. The biggest one to me is knowing when to spike them as soon as they use their side B. Which, if that's the most interesting about you, wow, that's boring. They have the speed and the percentage in order to rack up damage, and then they have the power for after everything is over. There's not really anything interesting to it. Honestly, if they were separate, they'd probably be a little more interesting. Pyra could be like Shiek, where she can do a lot of damage, she has a lot of movement options, but in the long game, you can't really kill a lot of people, so you gotta be really, really smart with how you do things. Pyra would probably, because she doesn't really have the speed to her advantage, play a lot more like Ganon, where you're not really mobile, but you have a lot of damage, so the thing that you're going to use against people is probably baiting them. Condition people, you read a role perfectly, and you kill them. It certainly would make matchups harder, but it would also make them a lot more interesting. I mean, look at Roy and Lucina, for example. Compare Lucina's usually, calm, meticulous neutral, with Roy just, taking drugs. And these different playstyles were just because of a few sort of differences within the characters. He does more damage, but he really wants you to hit with the hilt of the sword. It's basically like a boxing glove. Her damage is sparse, but her area when it comes to space that she can take is a lot longer. Simple things like that made the matchups more interesting. But what would happen if it was like Pyra and Mythra and you just had both? But if you had both, it would just be, I'm going to use Roy if I know I can get in easy, and if I know I just need range, I'm just going to use Lucina and then maybe kill with Roy. If these characters, or even a different assortment of characters, were together, it would be boring. It'd be a little different if Pyra and Mythra had a lot of sauce with their kits in general, but I don't really think they do. And at that point, all you have is a strong character, not really an interesting one. I mean, look at Tager. Tager is bottom 5 probably in his respected game. But when it comes to actual depth, dude, it's crazy. If Smash, or any sort of other platform fighter, ever sort of tried to do the Pyra and Mythra archetype again, I would really hope that they would at least give them something interesting to do. What the fuck? Is that a fucking beaver? Ah yes, of course, Daggett and Norbert. Now although they have a lot of the Pyra and Mythra problems, they have a lot of stuff. This coming from their tag mechanics. Now it's true that Pyra and Mythra do tag in, but it's not really like this. See, the Beavers have assists, which is more so based on Marvel vs. Capcom. You can tag in another fighter, making them do a specific move to hurl at the opponent. This has upsides and downsides. Able to swing things from afar, hitting the opponent, or maybe even killing them suddenly. But if you do this sort of tag in, and you get hit in the middle of it, you're not allowed to switch the other character for a little while. This more so hurts Norbert, because if you switch into him, and then you get hit, you don't really have the speed that you can do in order to outmaneuver people anymore. You have enough, but it's definitely not on the other Beavers level. This also applies to tag out. See, just like Pyra and Mythra, you can tag out to the person if you press a single button. But a difference with them is that if you do an assist, you can tag out as soon as the assist ends. This makes it so that you can bait people into going to the other direction when you need just a little more time and space. Add this all together and you really get a Pyra and Mythra archetype that is very cool. I do, however, wish they were both a little bit more tuned. What I mean is that Daggett is a little too strong while Norbert is a little too weak. Although you do see them switch, a lot of the problems that Pyra and Mythra have are still kind of with the Beavers. And it has more so to do with that one of them is better than the other, or one of them does pretty much everything, and there's not a lot of reason to switch into the other. Think about it like this. Daggett is faster, he can ramp up percentage more, his smash attacks, especially with the bowling ball, still kill people early, and he's better at trying to get on the stage. Norbert feels a little off. Yes, he is stronger, and yes, he has more range, but only a little bit. Vertically, his recovery is very good, but why even have better vertical movement if the horizontal movement, no matter how low it is, can get you back on stage? Especially if you slime cancel it. Thus, because of it, there's not really a reason to not play Daggett. Like, you'll switch to hopefully outpace someone and maybe get the cheeky kill on them, but if you don't, I've seen players just immediately go to Daggett again and just deuce forward smash and a lot of things, so it's not really much incentive. If you wanted more incentives in order to play the other Beaver, you would have to nerf Daggett a little bit, but then also buff Norbert a little bit. Maybe Daggett doesn't kill as well with his smash attacks. Maybe his recovery is more so a burst move rather than an effective way in order to get back on stage. But as for the other one, maybe his attack does a lot more damage than usual. Maybe his range is increased a lot more, but it's replaced with a lot more end lag. And maybe the vertical recovery is better than Daggett, meaning it gives you a reason to want to switch him in and recover from the ledge. The problem is that I don't really know Nazby Su's metagame very well. I've seen some tournaments of what they're doing, and I can only recommend things that would make them maybe a little more interesting. But I have heard some things such as SpongeBob being a very, very good top tier, and the reason why is because he doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses. And if that was the case, it would make these characters a lot worse, I guess. Kind of like Mr. Krabs, where it's like, he's really good when you have everything at your disposal, but to screech and haul in order to get to that point is pretty hard. And when I say get worse, I don't even mean like in frame data or like that, but it also gives them added weaknesses that people have against them that probably a lot of other, at least high tier Nazby 2 people don't really have. But either way, I think even if they don't change these characters for whatever reason, I still think they take the sort of archetype that Pyra and Mythra were going for, and they do add a lot of depth to make them very fun to play, even if it's not perfect. Alright, without any further ado, let's go with the next archetype, shall we? Alright, these Tandem fighters are very interesting because they're not necessarily the same character with a few different changes, they're actually separate characters in one. But the major difference is recognizing when you should make them Tandem fighters and when not to. I haven't read up the reasoning as to why Sakurai did this change, but if I had to give it a shot, I think the reason why they changed these characters is because one is clearly better than the other, and giving them less specials is kind of making design space problems. Think about it, if you're a Shiek main, literally, there's not a lot of incentive in order to go back to Zelda. But if you were a Zelda main and you like Zelda in that game, going into Shiek doesn't really do anything for you because you want to play Zelda. So at the highest competitive level, there's no reason to go from, say, Shiek to Zelda. But on a casual level, people will usually only play Zelda. Why would they go into Shiek? At that point, you might as well have made them separate characters and give them an extra sort of move in order to flesh them out a little bit. This is what happened in Smash 4 and in Ultimate. In Smash 4, they gave the new custom move to Zelda and making her completely a different character in order to play, and they just made it better in Smash Ultimate. This by itself gives you way more incentives in order to play Zelda, even if she's not as good as Shiek. It's like Ganondorf versus Mario. It's like, sure, Mario is better in a lot of different ways and has a lot more consistent things, but Ganondorf and the way he plays is really supposed to be punish incentive. So if you're that type of player, even though he's bad, he'll be good for you, which is what Zelda is doing. Again, I don't really know how Sakurai saw it, but this is what I see personally. So honestly, them being separate characters and them being their own thing makes more sense. But if you want a decent way in order to do this, I would look at Pokemon Trainer. Pokemon Trainer from Brawl versus Smash Ultimate is an entirely different beast. In Brawl, a lot of your moves were pretty bad across the board. Not only that, but you had to deal with this sort of PP function that everyone has, where it's like they get tired as they use more moves, making so you basically have to switch. Although for Tandem characters, I would want incentives in order to switch into them, I would rather them be the properties that the other characters can do, rather than a specific mechanic that just makes your character worse where you have to switch. The only time I've seen a game where you have to switch be exciting or be somewhat cool is with Killer Instinct and Idol. At least in that game, switching, at least from character specific to character specific, is random as hell. And if you want to manually switch, you have to damage yourself. Plus, it's still random, meaning you might not get the character switch that you want, and it'll probably incentivize you to deal with the randomness that this character has and to just deal with the weaknesses. Pokemon Trainer and Brawl is not this, because you just keep attacking, you keep attacking, and you keep attacking, and for some reason, your moves don't hurt. In Smash 4, this wasn't even a problem only because Charizard was the only one there. So in order to flesh him out, they gave him a new Rock Wrecker type move, which I like, by the way. I really like it. It's really good against Cloud in that game. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Smash Ultimate. The Ultimate team did very well this time around. Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard have weaknesses in different areas that they have to manage. Squirtle is very fast, he has a lot of moves that can rack up percentage, can't really kill a lot of people sometimes. Charizard is big, can survive a lot of things, but can't really be as fast as Squirtle, and sometimes he just gets outpaced by a lot of people. It's Ivysaur, at least in the beginning versions of the game, that was really a problem. Not like in a tier list sort of way, but I mean in a sort of mechanical way. Until later versions of the patches, Ivysaur was kind of the only character that you would want to switch into, and then you would switch into Charizard maybe if the opponent has racked like 60%. You don't really want the sort of outpacing and fast nature of Squirtle because his range and his damage was so consistent that it really didn't matter. This, however, has been changed. I believe it was also the patch where Ike's neutral air became less effective, but I don't know. Maybe misinformation. I don't fucking know. By nerfing the character of Ivysaur, you made it a sort of beaver effect, or what I want the beavers to be. There's reasons to play all of these characters, but they have certain weaknesses that you have to switch into in order to avoid. And even then, you still have to be mindful of them. To me, this is a pretty okay version of what a tandem character could be if you had 3 characters. I do, however, miss Smash 4 Charizard. Also, P+ Charizard. That man has Thunder Punch. That is so cool. But basically, this is what I'm talking about. There are certain reasons to go for a tandem character versus not go for a tandem character. I think the reason why he made Shiek and Zelda into the same thing is because technically they are, so it would make sense that you would make this subversion into both characters. But after seeing the sort of, not weaknesses, but the sort of catastrophes that can happen when you do that, or things that players don't really want to deal with, it would make sense why you wouldn't want them to be together again, just make them separate on their own. As for Pokemon Trainer, the different characters actually makes them a whole character and makes them more interesting because of it. So at least for platform fighters in the future, you really gotta know what you want to do or what you need to do in order to make these characters work. That goes for the Pyra and Mythra sort of characters, you know, similar characters but different properties, or the sort of Pokemon Trainer-like characters where there's either 2 or more characters and you have to really juggle their weaknesses. But I think we'll get better in the future. So, let's talk about one final tandem character, and then we'll go on to the king. Rosalina and Luna are the type of tandem characters that I can't really put with Pyra and Mythra, and I can't really put them with sort of Pokemon Trainer. They're kind of their own thing. They would be the traditional puppet character that a lot of other traditional fighters have. You have the base character of Rosalina, who has her own moves, has her own frame data, but you have her star friend that can also react to whatever she does. Now, the Smash 4 version versus the Smash Ultimate version is kinda different. They look the same when they do their moves, but it's just not. See, in Smash 4, the stars never really reacted to when Rosalina gets hit. So let's say you grabbed her, or let's say you put them in hit stun. They could still hit you. She just hits people with Killer Instinct's combo breaker. It's crazy. This didn't make it better for the fact that she was already good. Up air, the nair was alright, the back air hit pretty well. Jeez. Don't get me wrong, she was semi-interesting, and the fact that you can, like, let Starlo go, stay there, and, like, predict people to move, or just use it as, like, a sort of burst of the moves that you already have, that's pretty okay. But in Smash 4, it was more annoying than anything else. I think that's kind of why they changed it in Smash Ultimate, because when she gets grabbed, or she gets put in hit stun, for the most part, the Starlo will do an expressive sort of animation that makes it so they can't really do anything. This makes it more fair, because when I hit you, guess what? You get hit, rather than you can just get out of it. Or in other versions, it's like, you are getting hit with a combo, and then the Starlo trails you along, hits you with a single move, and you die. I'm definitely glad they changed that. As with what we have, it's fine for what it is. It's a very simple but effective way to make a puppet character. You have them at your side, you can throw them when they want to in order to maybe hit with a certain move or aerial, and if they're near you, they actually help you with certain attacks, making them a lot stronger. It's very simple. I don't really have much to say about it. I've also heard that there is a few more stuff that she has that makes her a little bit more technical than most characters. Jump, cancel, dash attack into nair. That's pretty technical for what it is. That's fine, and that's what I think she is. She's fine. I just don't play her because I have a big boy problem. I want to play like Ridley. I don't want to play Rosalina and Luna. That's really it. Has nothing really to do with her being bad. She's effective to what she is. Maybe if she had a lot more interesting things to do, maybe, but I don't want to complain. It's Smash. They don't really go out there when it comes to their character design, so whatever. However, there is one character I need to bring up. I think if you knew about tandem characters in any sort of platform fighter genre, you would instantly think about this character. And that's the Ice Climbers. At least when I hear about these guys, there's one thing that people really talk about, and that's their desyncing. Now to explain it, I believe it's about 6 to 7 frames, but basically there's a little delay for the second character in order to do a move. So what you do is that you manually make it so that they desync in order to do different varieties of combos. This looks very flashy and can do a lot of damage to people. And if you like that sort of thing, then you'll really like this character. However, for me, at least for a long time, I kind of thought that this was the only thing that they could really do. Like, sure, 0 to deaths are pretty fun in order to see, but it's like, if that's all that I see, I don't really think that you're as interesting as you can be. Apparently, though, there is a lot more that goes under the surface. I'll just list them all and talk about them. Rotating through neutral B in order to control the ground, down B rotations in order to stop approaches and for shield pressure, and to sometimes force a ledge trump. All of these together make ICs a lot more interesting in my eyes, because they're not just a combo fiend, you're also controlling your opponent, getting the neutral. You're not instantly going to go in and just wobble them to death. You have to actually outpace and outmaneuver, and because of the desync, you have a lot of tools in order to do that, to slow the game down a little bit until you get that one hit to do your desync combos. Now, me personally, the only reason why I wouldn't like desync combos is really because like they feel really bad for the opponent. Like, you can essentially TKO someone sometimes with just a really good option. But I also got to remember that it's Smash Brothers. Some back airs are doing like 17% to some people, when other platform fighters don't even let them get to like 9 or 10%. So damage is already incentivized in this game, so to complain about like getting KO'd out of one conversion, it's like, it could be nitpicky. But unlike, say, Pyra and Mythra, the sort of weaknesses that Ice Climber has can feel really nauseating in order to deal with. See, at least with Pyra and Mythra sort of characters, or even with characters such as Pokemon Trainer, you only have one guy out and you're just switching. Ice Climbers, you have both, meaning you have more to manage. So if one of them are leaving, guess what? That hurts your disadvantage way more. Because having one Ice Climber in order to deal with the opponent really feels like you should just reset. And true, I believe that characters should have weaknesses that you should be able to deal with, or you have a check towards it. But sometimes I look at Ice Climber players just like getting trounced and then getting like hit by one back air for the other guy and it's leaving, and it really feels like it's over. Sometimes it's not, but I think it's a pretty big weakness that you have to deal with. Which makes the sort of FTK hits that you do on the opponent seem a lot more like better to explain away. Because it's like, sure, I can get one sort of string in order to do a lot of damage, but also one like back air, one forward air, one misplaced aerial to me can really get rid of all my defenses, so it's fine. Overall though, pretty decent for what they're doing. Again, the only reason why I wouldn't play a character like this is just that I'm not that type of person. But to people that want to play like an additional sort of character and to do a lot of fancy stuff and also have some technical stuff on the side, this is kind of the perfect tandem character in order to have. Or at least it would be, if the Tikis didn't exist.
Long live the
Ice Climbers!
These characters, to me, are really well designed when you consider tandem fighters in general. But why is that? Well, you see, the reason why I think the Afi and Galu characters are so cool is because the tug of war between your disadvantage versus your advantage is very fun to play, even when you're like a medium level player to a top level player. Okay, so here's how it goes, right? There's one Tiki that you control. There's another Tiki that's out in the open. That Tiki can be hit or repositioned by you and the opponent. This is pretty cool because it doesn't really act like the other characters I was talking about. Ice Climbers has two characters in one, but it's not like you want them to leave your side for the most part. And most of the other characters, all you're doing is switching from one character to the next in one place. For Afi and Galu, when you switch, you are switching to the other character that's in the other zone. And because of that, positioning is key. But what they do is that they make positioning pretty fun to play around. As I've said before, a character can interact with the Tiki, hitting it to screw with your positioning, hitting it out so that it dies and it only has to deal with you. There's a lot of back and forth that this grants, especially when it comes to the neutral game. Because you have to juggle a lot of things as this character. You gotta hit the opponent, you gotta make sure that they don't ricochet it off of the ledge where you can't get it back until like another, 10, maybe 15 seconds? But you also gotta think about, if you switch into this character, would it be an optimal switch? Usually for characters like Rosalina and Luna, where you throw your character out, they kind of just get one shot by a lot of attacks, and there's not really a lot of things the Rosalina player can do to really interact with that. Like, sure, you can call them back, but they gotta be in like a neutral animation for you to bring them back, and then you use them. But most of the time, they get hit, they have a certain percentage that they can contain, and they just leave. The Tiki isn't really like this. The Tiki stays there, and it's like proportional to the move that hits them, but it's not like it increases the damage of the other character. They are essentially immortal and can only really die if they like hit the ledge, and even then it doesn't really get rid of a stock. You just can't use them for a long time until they come back. When I see Afi and Galu players play against other people, it's always interesting from the start. There's so much to juggle, but just getting one outpace moment doesn't really put you in horrible disadvantage like the ice climbers. It's more so a back and forth of how you're going to get your guy back and use him accordingly. And that's just the pace of the game. I didn't even talk about what they do when they actually get it going. Because of the cancel system in this game, there's a lot of conversions that you can do to people, especially with these characters. See, you can position your characters in a sort of way where you can continue the combo from far. Because of where the other is at, you could clip people when they, tech wrong, or maybe they do an aerial wrong and they just are getting hit. This means that you can usually combo from lots of places, or more so than most people. Rather than learning sort of decent combos in order to go for the kill, it's more so positioning based rather than recognizing a lot of combo buttons. It's still there, but it's not as direct. Speaking of positioning, especially when you switch into the next character in order to get the combo, they also have a lot of ways where they can just make themselves turn into projectile-like moves. You'll see a lot of them just grab the other and just use them in a sort of way to pole vault themselves onto the opponent for them to deal with. It's pretty cool. Not only that, but the switches and drags kind of become movement options if you think about it. Rather than using the switches in order to just combo, you kind of use them in order to outpace, and you combine the horizontal and vertical movement that you have in order to outpace people. Such as switching and then immediately using your air dash in order to juke them. Or maybe even doing a long string of the opponent, realizing that you can't finish it, and then immediately switching into the other guy. Essentially going back to neutral. When you play these characters, there's just so much you can do. The creativity is boundless. The interaction that the opponent has in order to get you off of them and for you to actually invest in moves is aplenty. And there's still no lack in what you can do against the opponent, especially when you do switch combos. It's perfect. They're interesting, it's not too annoying to deal with. And the disadvantages that you have are just simply not as bad if you were to say play ice climbers. Of course, that's also due to balance patches and people recognizing some of these aspects that they really want to bring out to the character, but either way, these are the characters that I want game designers to look at if they were to ever try tandem fighters, at least if this is what they were going for. If they're going for more of a Pyra and Mythra sort of build, then of course you probably shouldn't look into it too much, but take at least some of their aspects. If more of these tandem characters have this amount of heart and soul put into them, I really feel like the future is well for these kinds of things. And that's really all that I have. Now, I know I just yapped your ear off for probably a lot of good 30 minutes, but I do have some things to say. First of all, I heard that a lot of you don't subscribe to the channel, even though you see a lot of the content. And I get it, because just like a Vanoss video, you'll probably always see it regardless, so when it comes to platform fighter content, you'll probably always see me. But subscribing to me helps me. It gives me a lot of good reasons in order to keep doing content in the future. So either way, it's a win-win for both of us. 2, I have a few things that I might want to do in the future. I was supposed to talk about my card game and other card games in the future, but I have been incredibly lazy and had to deal with a lot of life right now, so that's going to have to be put on the back burner. However, some of the things that I probably do want to talk about is one video talking about how platform fighters can be better, and then another being the sort of iceberg platform fighter video. The traditional iceberg videos that were very popular like 2 years ago. I might do one. But it wouldn't just be me doing it. It would be a lot of other people that like platform fighters and want to talk about them. They can be in the vid also. So if you know someone that would love to be a part of it, or maybe you even yourself want to have a little thing here, just talk to me. I'll be on the Discord, and I'll have everything else where you can contact me. As with what is, the thing that platform fighters should do better, this will be a more, not really serious, but like a sort of thing that I need to talk about. Because if I'm being honest, a lot of the things that other people recommend platform fighters do well are very surface level. And I think with the podcast that I have done in the past, they do kind of answer some questions, but because the topic of the nature isn't directly towards it, it doesn't really cement itself. So hopefully with this video, if it ever gets done, I can actually talk about what people can do well in platform fighters, or how to make them better and not die, as a lot of people say. These are the 2 videos that I want to really do in the future, and hopefully I can do them in a relatively fast pace. That's just where my head is right now, and I would just like to say it before anything else. I'll see you guys later. Hopefully I can do those topics not in like 2 months.